What if I told you that for over 400 years, millions of people were stolen from their homes, torn from their families, and sold like cargo across the ocean? This is not a tale of fiction. It is the true and haunting story of the transatlantic slave trade, a chapter in history that shaped the modern world but left scars so deep they still linger today. Stay with me as we embark on a journey into the past, uncovering the origins, horrors, and legacies of one of humanity's greatest tragedies. Our story begins in the 15th century, a time when European explorers ventured into the unknown, driven by a hunger for wealth and power. The Portuguese were among the first to arrive on Africa's western shores, seeking gold, spices, and other treasures. What they found instead was a grim opportunity. Slavery was not new to Africa. It existed in various forms, often as a result of wars or as a form of punishment. However, it was nothing like what the Europeans would create, a brutal system that dehumanized people and commodified their very existence. The Portuguese quickly realized the potential profit of trading African slaves to work on sugar plantations in places like Madeira and São Tomé. This marked the beginning of a trade that would grow into an unstoppable force, spreading like wildfire across Europe, Africa, and the Americas. As the demand for slaves grew, the trade expanded to include other European nations, Spain, Britain, France, and the Netherlands. They formed alliances with African kingdoms, offering guns, textiles, and alcohol in exchange for human lives. The victims of the trade were often captured during raids or sold by rival tribes. Families were torn apart in an instant. Mothers separated from children, husbands from wives. Shackled and branded like animals, they were marched to the coast, where they faced a fate worse than death. Now, imagine this. Standing on the shores of West Africa, watching as men, women, and children are herded onto ships. These ships were known as slavers, and they were designed for one purpose: to transport human beings across the Atlantic Ocean in the most inhumane conditions imaginable. The Middle Passage was a journey from Africa to the Americas, and it was a living nightmare. Packed like sardines in the ship's hold, slaves were given barely enough room to breathe. Disease spread like wildfire, and the stench of human waste was unbearable. Many did not survive the journey, their bodies unceremoniously thrown overboard. For those who did, the ordeal was far from over. The auction block, a new life in chains. When the ships reached their destination, the slaves were unloaded and paraded like cattle at an auction. Buyers would examine their teeth, muscles, and skin, searching for the strongest and healthiest individuals. Families were torn apart yet again, as slaves were sold to the highest bidder. On plantations in the Americas and the Caribbean, slaves endured backbreaking labor from sunrise to sunset. Sugarcane, cotton, and tobacco were the crops they cultivated, commodities that enriched their masters and fueled the economies of Europe. Rebellion was met with unimaginable brutality. Whippings, mutilations, and executions were common punishments. Yet, even in the face of such cruelty, the spirit of resistance burned brightly. Throughout the era of the transatlantic slave trade, enslaved Africans fought back in every way they could. Some revolted during the Middle Passage, overtaking ships and attempting to return home. Others rebelled on plantations, organizing uprisings and escapes. The Maroons of Jamaica, for example, were groups of escaped slaves who established their own communities in the mountains, waging guerrilla warfare against their oppressors. In Haiti, enslaved Africans staged the only successful slave revolt in history, leading to the abolition of slavery and the establishment of the first black republic in the world. Even those who couldn't physically rebel found ways to resist, through music, storytelling, and preserving their cultural identities. The rhythm of the drums and the stories of their ancestors became a source of strength, a reminder of who they were and where they came from. The transatlantic slave trade officially ended in the 19th century, but its abolition was a long and arduous process. The voices of abolitionists, both black and white, grew louder, condemning the trade as a moral abomination. Figures like Olaudah Equiano, a former slave who published his autobiography, brought the horrors of slavery to light. In Britain, activists like William Wilberforce lobbied tirelessly for its abolition. The Haitian Revolution and the growing resistance among slaves themselves made the system increasingly unsustainable. In 1807, Britain passed the Slave Trade Act, outlawing the transatlantic trade. The United States followed suit in 1808, but slavery itself persisted in many places, and the fight for freedom and equality continued for decades. The transatlantic slave trade left an indelible mark on the world. It depopulated entire regions of Africa, disrupted societies, and contributed to the continent's economic underdevelopment. In the Americas, it created deeply entrenched racial hierarchies and systemic inequalities that persist to this day. But it also gave rise to a rich and diverse African diaspora. The cultural contributions of African descendants in music, art, literature, and cuisine have shaped the world in profound ways. From the rhythms of jazz and reggae to the resilience of civil rights movements, the legacy of those who endured the transatlantic slave trade lives on. And so, the story of the transatlantic slave trade is not just one of suffering and loss. It is also a story of resilience, resistance, and the unbreakable human spirit. Let us remember the past, not to dwell on its darkness, but to honor those who endured it and to ensure that such a tragedy is never repeated. Because history, when forgotten, has a way of coming back. Thanks for watching. Do well to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more.